In the early 1960s, British rock history was still being written, sometimes in places no one expected. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones are often remembered as rivals, two bands, two attitudes, two paths. But before the competition, before the charts and the mythology, there was a moment of collaboration, quiet, spontaneous, and historically crucial. And it produced one unexpected song, a Rolling Stones song, written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. That song was "I Wanna Be Your Man." In 1963, the Beatles were already rising fast. "Please Please Me" had made them stars, and Lennon and McCartney were becoming Britain's most talked-about songwriting duo. The Rolling Stones, on the other hand, were still finding their footing. They were a gritty R&B band, heavily inspired by Chuck Berry, Muddy Waters, and Bo Diddley. But they had one problem. They didn't have a hit song. Manager Andrew Loog Oldham knew this was dangerous. A band without original material, or at least a strong single, wouldn't survive long in the UK pop industry, so he did something bold. He brought the Rolling Stones to see Lennon and McCartney. According to multiple eyewitness accounts, including Paul McCartney himself, the song "I Wanna Be Your Man" was written almost instantly. Lennon and McCartney were in a room with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards when Paul suddenly realized something. The Stones needed a song, and Lennon and McCartney had one, unfinished. Paul later recalled, "We were in a room and John and I just went into the corner and finished it off while they were there. They didn't leave. They didn't plan it ahead of time. They literally turned their backs, wrote the rest of the song on the spot, and handed it over." John Lennon later described it bluntly, "We just gave it to them." "I Wanna Be Your Man" was simple, repetitive, bluesy, driven by rhythm more than melody. It wasn't considered a major Lennon-McCartney composition at the time, and that was exactly why it worked. The song fit the Rolling Stones' raw image, especially Brian Jones's slide guitar and Mick Jagger's aggressive vocal style. Keith Richards later admitted, "That song saved our career." Without it, the Stones might not have had their first breakthrough single. This is a crucial fact many fans get wrong. The Rolling Stones released "I Wanna Be Your Man" before the Beatles did. Rolling Stones version, November 1963. Beatles version, later on with the Beatles, 1963. For the Stones, it became their first UK top 20 hit. For the Beatles, it was almost an afterthought, sung by Ringo Starr, leaning heavily into raw rock energy. When the Beatles recorded the song, it was handed to Ringo. John later explained why. It was a good Ringo number. The Beatles version was faster, louder, and more chaotic, almost proto-punk in spirit. But Lennon was clear. This song wasn't written as art, it was written as fuel. Years later, John Lennon was brutally honest about "I Wanna Be Your Man." He didn't consider it one of his great works. In interviews, he categorized it as a throwaway. But even Lennon admitted its importance, not musically, but historically. It connected two bands who would soon dominate British rock from completely different angles. What makes this story powerful is timing. This happened before the rivalry, before the press turned Beatles versus Stones into a cultural war, before ego, fame, and identity hardened. At that moment, they were just musicians helping musicians. Paul later reflected, "We wanted them to succeed." And they did. Without "I Wanna Be Your Man," the Rolling Stones might not have broken into the charts in 1963. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards might not have been pushed to write their own songs. British rock history might have unfolded very differently. Keith Richards later admitted that seeing Lennon-McCartney write so easily was a wake-up call. It made us think, we can do this too. And they did. "I Wanna Be Your Man" isn't the greatest Lennon-McCartney song. It isn't poetic. It isn't deep. But it might be one of the most important crossroads in rock history, a Beatles song, given away to their future rivals, not out of strategy, not out of ego, but out of pure confidence. And sometimes that's how history really gets made.